"You're not real family," she said at dinner. The words sliced through the room like a knife. My fork froze midair. My face held a polite smile, but my chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I lifted my glass slowly, deliberately, and tilted it in her direction. My lips touched the rim as if I was making a toast that only I could hear. The table went quiet. Forks paused. Even the clinking of glasses seemed to retreat into silence. My husband's head dropped toward his plate. His napkin became a shield he could not look over. My sister-in-law's eyes flicked toward me, wide and curious, like she was waiting for a show. My father-in-law cleared his throat, but swallowed the words that never made it out. I did not answer. Not yet. I let the silence settle around me like smoke curling above a candle. She thought she had won. She thought I would sit there and let the sentence pass like every other insult before it. She was wrong. 2 days before this dinner, the family group chat buzzed with a short message. Dinner, Friday, everyone invited. The word everyone stared at me. It felt too generous, too careless, like a door cracked open only to be slammed later. My gut told me not to go. But guilt, that old companion, whispered that I should. So I went. The moment I stepped inside their house, I felt it. My chair was not at the center of the table. It was shifted slightly away, almost like an afterthought. She gave me a smile that did not touch her eyes. The kind of smile you give to a neighbor you hardly know. My gut whispered louder. Something was coming. Still, I brushed it aside. Maybe tonight will be different. Maybe tonight she will treat me as if I truly belong. I carried a bottle of Cabernet, not cheap but not ostentatious, hoping it would smooth the edges. She accepted it with a quick thanks and turned away. Her tone was flat, as if I had handed her a grocery receipt. Let me rewind. That single sentence, "You're not real family," did not rise from nowhere. It carried the weight of years, of cuts so small, yet so constant they became scars. I remembered the Christmas party when she handed out monogrammed sweaters to everyone. I opened my gift to find nothing but tissue paper. She laughed lightly and said, "Oh, they only came in family sizes." Everyone chuckled. I smiled too, though my chest burned. I remembered the summer barbecue when she raised her glass and toasted, "To the women who keep this family alive." She listed every name but mine. I had been standing at the grill since dawn, sweating through my dress while basting ribs and chopping vegetables. She did not even glance my way. I remembered the surgery bill, when my husband and I paid the deposit that insurance would not cover. She thanked him publicly in front of the whole family, her hand on his shoulder. My name never entered her mouth. Over and over, the pattern was clear. I was present, but never belonging. I could stand in the middle of their living room and still be treated like furniture. That night, the dining room glowed with golden light. The oak table stretched the length of the room, its surface crowded with pot roast, bowls of mashed potatoes, baskets of bread. Candles flickered, shadows bending against the walls. The smell of garlic and rosemary filled the air, heavy and inviting. It should have felt warm. Instead, it felt staged, like I was stepping onto a set where everyone else already knew their lines. My sister-in-law scrolled her phone under the table. My father-in-law sliced meat carefully, avoiding eye contact. My husband chewed slowly, his shoulders tense. The air felt thick with something unsaid. And then she said it. "You're not real family." It came out soft, deliberate, wrapped in a smile that belonged more to a villain than a hostess. The forks paused, the laughter shrank. My husband coughed once, then sank back into silence. My brother-in-law smirked faintly, a cruel little curve of lips. My sister-in-law froze, fork hovering inches from her mouth. I lifted my glass. My hand trembled, but I held it steady. The wine caught the candlelight, deep red, sharp and bitter when it touched my tongue. I thought of the words I could say, the explosion I could unleash. I held them back. I let the moment breathe. Inside, my blood boiled. My cheeks flushed. My heartbeat pounded so loud I thought the table might hear it. But my face remained calm. I had learned long ago that rage only fed her. The first night I met her, she had extended her hand and said, "We'll see how long this lasts." My husband had laughed nervously. I had laughed too, but inside my stomach had sunk. She had not been joking. For years I had tried to earn a place at her table, I babysat her grandkids when no one else could. I hosted Thanksgiving when she claimed she was too tired. I arrived early to wash vegetables, to set up chairs, to make her life easier. I thought each sacrifice might move the needle. Each time, she reminded me it did not. So now, when she looked across the table with that satisfied smile, expecting silence, I decided not to give her what she wanted. I smiled back. Later that night, I would replay every detail. The way my husband's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. The way my father-in-law kept his gaze locked on his potatoes. The way my sister-in-law looked down quickly, pretending she was not listening. But most of all, I remembered her face. When I raised my glass, she thought it was surrender. She thought I was toasting her authority. She thought she had won. She did not realize what was coming. I set my glass down gently. The faint ring of glass against porcelain echoed louder than any argument could have. My voice was steady, my words chosen with care. People leaned closer, straining to hear. And that was the moment everything began to shift. I let the words hang in the air a little longer before I spoke. My glass was still in my hand. My fingers had steadied by then, though my pulse had not. "Then let's toast to strangers," I said. My tone was calm, almost light-hearted, but it landed with a weight that pressed the room into silence again. Her smile faltered. For the first time in years, I saw her blink without an answer ready. My husband's fork slipped from his hand and clattered against his plate. My sister-in-law smirked, but looked away quickly when she realized no one else was laughing. I raised the glass a second time, tilted it in her direction, and took another sip. The wine was bitter, but it coated my throat like armor. Then I set it down and leaned back, as if nothing had happened. The truth is, I had already been preparing for this moment. Not consciously, not with a script, but deep down, I knew it would come. Every holiday, every birthday, every awkward dinner where I was placed at the far corner of the table had been rehearsals. She had been chipping away at my place in the family for years, and now she had finally said it out loud. I remembered the 4th of July picnic. I had carried trays of food outside while she bragged about how her daughter had planned everything. My contribution was invisible. I remembered Easter, when she handed me her coat at church as if I were staff, while telling the others what a blessing it was to have family together. I remembered Thanksgiving when she told my husband, right in front of me, that he could always come home if he ever got tired of this situation. I had been swallowing her insults like bitter pills. Tonight, one lodged in my throat, and instead of choking, I spit it back out. The dinner resumed in stilted fragments. My father-in-law tried to restart conversation by commenting on the weather, something about the early frost and the heating bill. My brother-in-law asked for more potatoes, but his voice cracked. My husband chewed silently, his eyes fixed on the tablecloth as if it held answers he could not find in me. I did not speak again for a while. I let them twist in the discomfort. The air was heavy with things unsaid. Every time a fork clinked against a plate, it sounded like a bell in a cathedral. She, my mother-in-law, stayed unusually quiet. I could feel her recalibrating, searching for a new line of attack. When dessert came, a store-bought cheesecake she had passed off as homemade, she cleared her throat. "Family should support each other," she said. Her eyes cut toward me. I leaned forward slightly. "I agree," I said. My voice was smooth, steady. It is a shame it rarely works both ways. The silence this time was thicker, denser. My husband finally looked at me but said nothing. I watched his face, waiting for even a flicker of support. Nothing came. After dinner, people shifted in their seats, unsure if they should leave or stay. My sister-in-law gathered plates, trying to break the tension with small talk about her new job. My father-in-law poured himself more wine. My mother-in-law lingered at the head of the table, pretending to tidy napkins while really watching me. I decided to end the evening on my own terms. I stood, pushed my chair back quietly, and reached for my coat. "Thank you for dinner," I said, directing the words to the room rather than to her. It was memorable. No one answered right away. Then my father-in-law mumbled something that sounded like, "safe drive." My husband stayed seated. He did not even stand to walk me out. I left the house, the night air sharp against my face. My hands were still shaking, though not from fear anymore, from release. At home, I sat on the couch and replayed everything in my head. Her words, my toast, The silence. I thought about how many times I had tried to belong. I thought about the casseroles, the babysitting, the polite smiles when she introduced me as my son's wife, rather than by name. I thought about the hours I had poured into proving myself, hours I could never get back. And then I thought about how it felt to finally push back, even if only with a sentence. It felt like standing after being told to kneel. It felt like breathing after holding my breath for years. My phone buzzed. A message from my husband. We need to talk. That was all it said. No apology, no defense, just that. I typed back. We do. Then I turned off the phone. The next morning, I expected regret to wash over me. I expected to replay my words with shame, to tell myself I had gone too far. Instead, I felt light. I cooked myself breakfast, real bacon and eggs, not the soggy casseroles she favored. I opened the blinds and let the sun pour in. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in my own skin again. By noon, there was a knock at the door. My husband. He stepped inside, his expression a mix of guilt and exhaustion. He did not sit. She is upset, he said. So am I replied. He rubbed his forehead. She thinks you embarrassed her. I laughed, short and sharp. She embarrassed herself. He did not argue. He looked at me, really looked, like he was seeing me for the first time in months. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted. Maybe you are not supposed to, I said. That night, I thought about the word family. How she had used it like a weapon, a gate she controlled, a circle I would never be allowed to enter. But family is not defined by one person's approval. Family is not a table where some sit comfortably, while others are told to move their chairs away. As I closed my eyes, I realized something. For the first time, her power over me had cracked. She could keep her approval. She could keep her circle. I did not need it anymore, and I wondered if she understood, as she sat in her house replaying my words, that she had lost something too. The days after that dinner stretched out like a film on slow motion. Everything seemed quieter, yet heavier, like the air itself had thickened. I kept expecting a text or a call from her, some dramatic message demanding an apology. Instead, silence. The absence of her voice felt louder than her insults ever had. My husband walked around the house like a man balancing two worlds. He tiptoed between me and her, careful not to lean too far in either direction. At breakfast, he tried small talk about the weather, about errands, anything but the subject that sat between us like a locked trunk. One evening, 3 nights after the dinner, he finally spoke. She thinks you planned it, he said. He would not meet my eyes. Planned what? I asked. The toast. The words. She thinks you were waiting for the right moment to humiliate her. I set my fork down. She humiliated herself. I just refused to bow my head this time. He sighed, long and tired. You know how she is. Yes, I said. That is exactly the problem. Flashbacks flooded me in quiet moments. I remembered my wedding day, when she whispered loud enough for me to hear, "She doesn't belong here." I remembered hosting Thanksgiving at our house, spending hours cooking, only for her to walk in with a store-bought pie and announce, "Now the meal is complete." I remembered babysitting her granddaughter for weeks while she traveled, and when she returned, she handed a gift only to my husband, thanking him for stepping up. Each memory stacked on top of the other, a tower of slights that had been wobbling for years. That dinner was not an accident. It was the final brick, the one that made the tower collapse. The following weekend, there was another family gathering. Smaller, less formal. A cousin's birthday. I debated whether to go. My husband wanted me there. He insisted it would look worse if I skipped. I agreed, though my stomach twisted at the thought of walking back into that house. When we arrived, the atmosphere was strained but polished. People smiled too hard. Conversations were too loud, covering the tension beneath. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, a performance for the others. Her eyes, however, told a different story. During cake cutting, she stood close to me, whispering just above the noise, "You made me look weak." I turned to her slowly. "You did that yourself." She narrowed her eyes, then pasted on another smile, as someone handed her a slice of cake. I realized then that her power was performance. As long as I played along, she was in control. Now that I had stopped, she was scrambling. Later that night, after we returned home, I sat on the edge of my bed replaying the evening. My husband paced the room. "This is tearing the family apart," he said. "No," I replied. "This is exposing what was already broken." He stopped pacing. "So what do we do?" I looked at him carefully. "The question is, what do you do? Because I already made my choice." Days turned into weeks. She tried subtle attempts to regain control. An invitation to lunch that included everyone except me. A group photo posted online where she cropped me out. A holiday plan where my name was not on the list. Each time, I felt the sting, but it did not break me. It only confirmed what I had already decided. Her circle was hers to guard. I was done asking for a seat inside it. One afternoon, my sister-in-law called me. Her voice was hushed. "She is furious," she said. "Not just at you, at everyone who did not defend her that night." I almost laughed. "So now silence offends her too." "She said you embarrassed the family," my sister-in-law continued. "No," I said softly. "I reminded the family who I am. That was the real embarrassment for her." The real shift came during Christmas. A big dinner, as always. I had decided not to go. I was tired of staging my presence like a performance. But my husband begged. "One more try," he said. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The house was decorated with lights and garlands. The smell of pine needles mixed with cinnamon. Laughter rang out as gifts were passed around. And then, like every year, she brought out the photo albums. Her tradition. Her way of writing history. She flipped through pages of birthdays and vacations, narrating loudly. When she reached the section with our wedding photos, she paused. She lingered on a picture of me. She cleared her throat. "She looked beautiful that day, didn't she?" she said to the room. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. Compliments were not her language. The room went still, everyone waiting. My husband's eyes widened. I looked at her. She looked back, her smile thin, controlled, but her tone was softer than usual. It was not an apology. It was not redemption. It was survival. She was rewriting the moment to protect her image. I understood then that she would never change. She would only adjust her performance. That night, driving home, I stared out the window at the passing lights. My husband finally asked, "Do you think she meant it?" "No," I said. "But it does not matter anymore." "Why not?" he asked. "Because I do not need her words to define me," I said. "Not anymore." In the weeks that followed, I carried that clarity with me. Her comments still stung, but they no longer carved into me the way they once had. I had faced her. I had stood my ground. She could keep her circle. I had built my own. And sometimes, late at night, I wondered if she realized it. If she understood that by telling me I was not real family, she had lost the only chance to truly make me one. Christmas Eve came with its usual performance. The house was dressed in glittering lights, wreaths hung in every window, the scent of cloves and cinnamon wafting from the kitchen. From the outside it looked perfect, a Norman Rockwell painting brought to life. Inside, the tension simmered like water on the edge of boiling. I arrived with my husband, a plate of cookies I had baked that morning, balanced in my hands. He rang the doorbell. I adjusted my scarf and reminded myself to breathe. The door opened, and there she was, smiling a smile that showed her teeth but not her heart. "You made it," she said, as though my presence were unexpected. Inside, the family had already gathered around the dining room table. My father-in-law poured wine into crystal glasses. My sister-in-law laughed too loudly at something her brother had said. Children ran in circles, squealing with sugar and excitement. It all looked so warm, so inviting, but I felt like I was stepping onto a stage where the script had already been written without me. Dinner began with small talk. The roast beef was tender, the mashed potatoes buttery, the green beans bright with garlic. I smiled, answered questions about work, passed dishes when asked. I kept my posture calm, my tone even. Beneath the surface, I was waiting. And then it happened. Halfway through dessert, as forks clinked against plates and conversation swelled, she leaned back in her chair. Her glass of wine caught the light as she raised it. Her voice was soft, almost casual, but her eyes fixed on me with precision. "You're not real family." The words were the same as before, delivered now in front of even more witnesses. She wanted to stamp her authority, to remind me that no matter how many dinners I attended, no matter how many pies I baked or presents I wrapped, I would never belong. The room froze. My husband stiffened, his fork halfway to his mouth. My father-in-law cleared his throat, but did not intervene. My sister-in-law smirked faintly and looked down at her lap. The children went silent, sensing the change in the air. I picked up my glass. My hand no longer shook. I had rehearsed this moment too many times in my mind. I smiled, cool and measured, and tilted the rim of the glass toward her. "To strangers, then," I said, my voice steady. A ripple moved through the room. Someone coughed. My husband dropped his fork, the sound sharp against his plate. My father-in-law shifted uncomfortably in his chair. She blinked, just once, and for a brief second, I saw her falter. Her mask slipped, the smile wavered, and her eyes darted away, but then she regained herself, straightening her shoulders and laughing lightly as if I had made a harmless joke. The problem for her was that no one else laughed. The silence that followed was heavy. Every sound seemed magnified. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, the hiss of a log shifting in the fireplace, the clink of a spoon against porcelain. I took another sip of wine, slow and deliberate, and placed the glass back on the table. My heart was pounding, but my face remained calm. I could feel the heat in my cheeks, the pulse in my fingertips, but I would not let her see it. "I suppose," I said quietly, "family is what you make of it." Her head snapped back toward me. "Excuse me?" "Family," I repeated, my tone still soft. "It is not just blood. It is not just a name. It is how you treat people, how you show up for them." I let my eyes drift across the table, taking in the others who were watching silently. "And sometimes, family is chosen." The silence cracked. My sister-in-law shifted in her seat. My father-in-law poured himself more wine with a shaky hand. Even my husband finally looked up, though his lips stayed pressed together. She tried to laugh again, but it was brittle. "You always take things too seriously." "No," I said, still calm. "I just refuse to pretend anymore." The rest of the evening unfolded in fragments. She busied herself with clearing plates, barking orders to anyone within reach. The others tried to restart conversations, but everything felt forced, like actors fumbling after forgetting their lines. The warmth that had filled the house minutes earlier had vanished. When the time came to open gifts, I sat quietly and watched. She handed presents to everyone, narrating each one with exaggerated cheer. When she reached me, she gave a small package wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a candle, plain and unscented. "I thought you'd like something simple," she said, her voice dripping with sugar. I smiled. "Perfect," I said, setting it aside. The gift was not the insult she intended. It was proof. Proof that no matter how she dressed it, her approval was empty. Later that night, when everyone had gone home, I sat in the car with my husband. The cold air fogged the windows. The street outside was lined with glowing houses, each window a picture of holiday cheer. "She will never change," I said. He rubbed his hands over his face. "I know." "Then you have to decide," I said. My voice was low but firm. "Do you stand with her or with me?" He was silent for a long time. I stared out the window at the lights, my reflection faint against the glass. Finally, he said, "With you." I turned toward him. "Then prove it." That was the night everything shifted. The moment she realized I would not be silent. The moment the others saw her mask crack. The moment my husband finally admitted the truth out loud. As I closed my eyes that night, I knew the battle was not over. She would strike again, in smaller ways, in petty gestures, but she had lost something she could never regain. She had lost her grip on me, and I wondered if she knew, as she lay awake in her house that night, that by calling me an outsider, she had set herself apart instead. The night after Christmas, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. My husband slept beside me, his breathing slow and steady. I replayed the dinner again and again, her voice echoing, my glass lifting, the silence that followed. For years she had pushed me into the corner, convinced that I would swallow insult after insult. This time I had met her words head-on, not with shouting, but with something sharper. Calm. It is strange how power works. She had always believed she held it. The matriarch, the one who decided who belonged and who did not. But the second I stopped chasing her approval, the power shifted. I felt it that night, when no one laughed at her joke. I felt it in the way her smile cracked, even for just a second. In the days that followed, the ripple continued. My sister-in-law called me, her voice hushed like she was sharing a secret. She has not stopped talking about it, she said. She says you embarrassed her in front of the whole family. I leaned against the kitchen counter, phone pressed to my ear. She embarrassed herself. I just held up a mirror. There was a pause. Then, almost reluctantly, my sister-in-law said, Honestly, I thought it was kind of brilliant. His. That was when I realized the truth. My quiet defiance had done more than just push back against her. It had exposed her. Everyone had seen it. And once seen, it could not be unseen. A week later, we were invited back for Sunday dinner. I almost said no, but my husband urged me. It will be awkward if we keep avoiding them, he said. Against my better judgment, I agreed. When we walked in, I noticed immediately how the room shifted. People looked at me differently. My father-in-law offered me a seat closer to the center of the table. My sister-in-law made small talk with me first instead of ignoring me. Even the cousins seemed friendlier, eager to chat. She noticed it too. My mother-in-law watched from the head of the table, her smile tighter than usual, her knuckles pale against her wine glass. Throughout dinner, she tried to reassert herself. She made snide comments about my cooking. She brought up old stories designed to embarrass me. But each time, the reactions were different. Where once the room would have laughed along, now there was hesitation. Awkward glances. Silence. Power was slipping through her fingers. At one point, she leaned across the table. Some people should remember they are only here because of marriage, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I smiled and nodded. Marriage is what makes a family, I replied smoothly. Then I turned to my sister-in-law and asked about her new job. It was a small move, but it landed. I saw her stiffen, saw the frustration flash in her eyes. She wanted me to bite, to explode, to prove her point that I did not belong. Instead, I remained calm, redirecting the spotlight away from her and onto myself. The more I did it, the more the family noticed. Later that evening, as coffee was being served, my father-in-law raised his glass. To family, he said simply. His eyes flicked toward me as he spoke. For the first time, she did not echo the toast. She pressed her lips together and looked away. I clinked my glass softly. To family, I repeated. My voice was calm, but inside I felt something stronger than pride. Relief. For once, the word did not feel like a weapon. The following week, my husband told me something I had not expected. She asked me why you are suddenly so confident, he said. I laughed. Because I stopped waiting for her permission. He frowned. She does not like it. She never did, I replied. The only difference is that now she knows she cannot control me. The change was not immediate, but it was undeniable. Invitations still came, but they were worded differently. My name was no longer missing. At dinners, people made space for me without being asked. When conversations turned sharp, someone would step in before it went too far. Small gestures, but each one chipped away at the wall she had built around me. And she knew it. Every time I caught her watching me, her eyes held a mix of anger and something else. Fear. Not fear of me, but fear of losing what she had always claimed as hers. Authority. Influence. The power to decide who belonged. One evening, after another strained family dinner, I lingered in the kitchen while she cleared plates. She thought we were alone. You think you won, don't you? She said, her back to me. I set down my glass. It is not about winning. It is about no longer losing. She turned, her eyes sharp. You are clever, but clever does not make you family. I met her Haza steadily. No, respect does. For a moment, we just stood there, locked in silence. Then she looked away and stacked another plate. That was when I understood. She would never admit defeat, but she would feel it. Every time she tried to put me down, and the family no longer followed. Every time I responded with calm instead of rage. Every time I reminded her that her words no longer defined me. Back home that night, I sat on the couch and thought about the journey. Years of bending, years of trying, years of swallowing insults. All it had taken to shift everything was one moment of stillness, one glass raised, one refusal to break. My husband joined me, sitting quietly by my side. After a while, he said, "You changed something." "No," I said softly. "She changed it when she tried to push me too far. I just refused to move." As I closed my eyes that night, I realized the truth. She had lost something bigger than control over me. She had lost her image. The mask of the powerful matriarch had cracked, and everyone had seen it. And I wondered if she realized, deep down, that the power she had guarded so fiercely was gone. The weeks after that confrontation felt different, lighter. Not because she stopped trying to remind me of my place, but because I finally stopped caring. For years, her words had been chains. Now they were only noise. I had lifted my glass, I had spoken, and in that moment, something shifted that could not be undone. I saw her again at another Sunday dinner. The house was the same, glowing with the same golden lights, filled with the same smells of garlic bread and roast. But the atmosphere had changed. People greeted me first. My chair was at the center of the table, not shoved into the corner. She noticed, of course. I could see the tension in her jaw, the way she gripped her glass a little too tightly. She made small comments throughout the meal, small digs meant to cut, but each one fell flat. Where once the room might have laughed or nodded along, now they looked away. Silence hung after her words, and that silence said more than any defense I could have given. After dinner, my husband and I walked to the car. The night air was cool, the driveway slick with frost. He put his hands in his pockets and looked at me. "You know she will never forgive you," he said. I opened the car door. She will never forgive me for refusing to bend, but forgiveness was never the point. He frowned. "Then, what is?" I looked at him, the lights from the house glowing behind him. "The point is that she cannot control me anymore. That is enough." In the days that followed, little things confirmed the shift. My sister-in-law sent me a message thanking me for what I had said. She admitted that she too had felt the sting of being overlooked, though never as directly. My father-in-law invited me to lunch, something he had never done before. Even distant relatives reached out, subtle signs that they had seen what happened and had quietly taken note. But the most telling change came from her. She started avoiding direct confrontation. Her comments became softer, her presence less imposing. It was as if she realized that every attack risked exposing her further. Her power had always come from silence. Mine, it turned out, came from breaking it. One afternoon, she called me. The first time she had ever done so without going through my husband. Her voice was clipped, rehearsed. "I think we got off on the wrong foot," she said. I almost laughed. The wrong foot? Years of dismissals, insults, and exclusions, and she wanted to call it a misstep. Still, I stayed quiet, waiting. "I would like us to try again," she continued, "for the sake of the family." There it was. The phrase she always used when she wanted obedience. "For the sake of the family." I smiled into the phone. "Family is built on respect," I said. "When you are ready for that, let me know." Then I ended the call. I sat there in silence, the phone still warm in my hand. For the first time in years, I felt no guilt, only clarity. Months passed. There were more dinners, more gatherings, more subtle battles. She never changed completely. She could not. But she was careful now, cautious. The weight she had carried for so long was no longer hers alone. The others had seen her slip, and once seen, it could not be unseen. Sometimes I caught her looking at me, her eyes calculating. I could almost hear the thoughts spinning in her head. How did she lose control? How did the outsider find her voice? She never asked me directly, but the question lived in her silence. One evening, after another strained family gathering, I drove home alone. My husband had stayed behind to help his father fix a leaky faucet. The road was quiet, the sky heavy with stars. I rolled down the window and let the cold air rush in. I thought about everything, the dinners, the insults, the moment I lifted my glass, the way the room had gone silent, the way her smile had cracked. I thought about the years I had spent chasing her approval, desperate to belong, and I thought about how little it mattered now. Belonging is not about being accepted by someone who thrives on exclusion. Belonging is about knowing who you are, even when someone tries to erase you. Back at home, I curled up on the couch with a blanket and a cup of tea. The house was quiet. My phone buzzed with a message from my husband. "Everything okay?" I typed back, "Yes, finally." I stared at the screen for a long moment before setting it aside. The tea was warm in my hands. The silence in the house was gentle, not heavy. She will probably never see me as real family. That is the truth. But I no longer need her to. Because the night she said those words, she lost something greater than my acceptance. She lost her audience. And maybe one day, she will realize that in trying to push me out, she only pushed herself into a corner